So in my previous talk on the melting point of non-duality, I said we were basically predefining non-duality, which meant just, asking what it is you're doing and why you want to define it, how you're going to define non-duality, and who's doing the defining. So it's taking a look at what you're going to do before you actually do it. And today I want to cover some definitions of non-duality. And they're going to include a couple of just like traditional definitions, and I'm going to give examples of what I call anti-definitions, undefinitions, and non-definitions. And then we'll conclude with what I call a post-definition of non-duality. And I'm going to quote Adyashanti for that, because he talks about post-definition or something equivalent to that. And so, as I've said before, my definition of non-duality means there are not two things. Things aren't separate, and yet at the same time we see separate things that are highly individualistic. Is a kind of paradox. But at least with that definition, you can see it. It has traction. So you can have a kind of a knowing that things aren't separate, and you can see that things are individualistic. So there's some traction to that definition. Another definition, I think, that has traction given by Ken Wilber. He says non-duality means, as the Upanishads put it, to be freed of the pairs. That is, the great liberation consists in being freed of the pairs of opposites, Ken Wilber says. Freed of duality and finding instead the non-dual one taste that gives rise to both. And this is liberation, Ken Wilber says, because we cease the impossible, painful dream of spending our entire lives trying to find an up without a down, an inside without an outside, a good without an evil, a pleasure without its inevitable pain. That's, again, another definition that has traction. Now, Peter Fenner comes from the Dzogchen school and runs the Radiant Mind. He said that non-duality, quoting him, is going beyond existence and non-existence. He says, quoting, non-duality is way beyond the minds. So there's no traction there. Nothing there for you. And so this is a different way of defining non-duality. I call it kind of a non-definition. It's a pointer, but it's not really a definition. It doesn't leave you with anything. Example of an undefinition comes from Dan Berkow, a psychotherapist, who said, defining non-duality is like adding legs to a snake. What is that? I call it an undefinition. Kenneth Madden gave this anti-definition. He said, non-duality becomes the last refuge of the individual who is under threat. It is fodder for the mind. It becomes the new best concept in town, as it were. Kenneth Madden, it's kind of an anti-definition, really. Stephen Wolinsky is a teacher associated with Nisargadatta, and at the first Science and Non-Duality conference, he announced to a large audience cheerfully and insistently, he said, there's no such thing as non-duality. So there, that's kind of another anti-definition. So if you want more definitions, go to nonduality.com. There's a link there. You can find hundreds of them probably. The consideration of definitions of non-duality is in itself, it can be a way of pursuing truth or the self or non-duality, if that's how you choose to go. You certainly can come up with your own definition of non-duality, your own anti-definition, undefinition, non-definition. And I mentioned that there's also the post-definition, which is simply, really, it's just your life as it is. It's your life as you're living it. And it's totally your life, even the life of, there's neither me nor the absence of me. Even the life of the absence of there is neither me nor the absence of me. So Adyashanti says, in that regard, related to post-definition, he says, to awaken to the absolute view is profound and transformative, but to awaken from all fixed points of view is the birth of true non-duality. All fixed points of view, there is no you. That's a fixed point of view. So what does it mean to awaken from that or to that? Adyashanti says, quoting him, enlightenment means the end of all division. It's not simply having an occasional experience of unity beyond division. It's actually being undivided. And this is what non-duality truly means, Adyashanti says. He says non-duality means that the inner revelation and the outer expression of the personality are one and the same. So that's post-definition. It's your life. He says so few seem to be interested in the greater implication contained within profound spiritual experiences, because it's the contemplation of those implications which quickly bring to awareness the inner divisions existing within most of us. So in this talk, I revisited the pre-definition of non-duality. I gave some definitions, anti-definitions, non-definitions, undefinitions, and we talked about the post-definition of non-duality, which is your life. So I'm posting 3 times a week on arts, humor, and non-duality talks. Subscribe.